This is page 82 in our notes, and this kind of goes along with SP1 all the way through 5. We're going to talk about important, oops, spelled that wrong already, statistical terms. Important statistical terms. This is kind of a review over things we've learned through SP 1 through 5. The first term is the word frequency. And frequency just means how often a piece of data occurs. How often a piece of data, whatever you want to say, occurs. So example could be like number of people. In our last example with histograms, our frequency was how many people were reading certain amount of minutes. It could also be an item. So frequency is normally graphed on the y-axis. Oops, box this in. Frequency is found on the y-axis. Draw a line here. Frequency, how frequent or how often something occurs. Another term we had was symmetrical. And most of the data was found near the center. That's what makes it symmetrical. Most of the data is near the center. We put a star here and said the mean, the median, and the mode. They would all be the same. They are all the same. They would all be found in the center, so either one of any of those would be good uses of central tendency. If they ask you how could you measure the central tendency. So symmetrical, most of the data is in the center. The histogram example, it was symmetrical. If I were to draw like a quick dot plot, I could say, I'm going to trace this blue line right here. And maybe in the center I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this side's got 1, 2, 3. So this side has to have 1, 2, 3. This side has 2, this side has 2, and then 1 and 1. And so symmetrical, we kind of have this look to it. Some other terms we talked about was skewed or clustered. And so we use those terms. Skewed, clustered. So I'm going to kind of put them together here. When things are skewed or clustered, the mean and the median and the mode are not going to be the same. They are not the same. So what do I mean that the mean and the median and the mode would not be the same if the data is skewed or clustered? Well, I'll give you some examples. We talked about if I trace this line right here and I say, there's my line here. If I call this one left clustered, then that means most of the data is clustered on the left. So maybe I've got like 1, 2, 3 dots, and then I've got 1, 2, 3 dots. Maybe I've got 2 dots. And then I go a little ways and I might have 2 and then 1. Most of it's clustered to the left, and then we called it that it tailed to the right. The opposite of that would be right clustered. So I'm going to draw a line up here, and just the opposite of that, most of the data is going to be on the right. So maybe you have 3 dots again, and maybe you have 2, and then you kind of come over with 2 and 1. So it's mostly clustered on the right, but it's going to tail back over to the left. So it's going to skew the data. You wouldn't want, your mode is going to be like the far left over here and the far right. Your median somewhere in the middle, and then your mean gets pulled one way or the other because of this, the one that's kind of out there. Another term we talked about was outlier, and that's exactly what happens here is when you have outliers, it pulls your data one way or the other. Sometimes outliers are good to help make your data look good, and sometimes they can hurt you. So outlier is just an extreme, or we call it rare, meaning it doesn't happen very often. Extreme or rare occurrence. It doesn't occur very often. So occurrence means it's rare. We'll call it a data set. So in a set of data with a set of numbers, an outlier is just kind of extreme. It doesn't really fit with the rest. So a good example of this, that would be an outlier. If I give you a data set that's mostly in the 40s, like 42, 45, 49, and even 50, and then I give you one that's 2, your outlier just kind of doesn't fit with the rest, and so that 2 is kind of your outlier. So you may not really have a mode, one that occurs the most. Your median's somewhere here in the middle, probably somewhere in the 40s, but your mean's going to get pulled down because of your 2. So the homework that goes along with our statistical terms, you need to do the histogram worksheet. I'm going to go along with the histogram notes, and then you'll be ready to do the study guide. For CFA 8 and 9. 8 has SP 1, 2, 3, and 9 has SP 4 and 5. We'll actually do all of this together. We'll even take the test together. You're going to use a calculator, but you need to show your work. Use a calculator, show your work.